welcome, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm State Senator Jason Lewis, and thrilled to be hosting another one of our what we call community conversations, which are discussions about topics of interest to members of our community. We've had conversations in the past on affordable housing, on public transportation, on the opioid epidemic, and a range of other topics. Tonight's topic, of course, has to do with arts and culture and how arts and culture can help be an engine for local economic development. And I have to say, and I want to give a shout out to Matt Hellman from my office who helped organize the event, but Matt can jump in here. I think we may have gotten more shares on social media and more enthusiasm about this community conversation tonight than perhaps any of those that we've done in the past. So I think that speaks to how much of a how much interest there is in this topic and how important it is. Of course, I want to thank the wait, I got to stop and get the name right here. Greater Boston Stage Company for hosting us in this fantastic theater. Like everybody else, I'm still getting used to the new name, and it's sinking in, and very excited that we can be here tonight and we can join in celebrating the new name and really the opportunity to make this great institution a regional attraction. I think folks here in Stoneham, have known about this theater, have enjoyed it for a long time, but many people in surrounding communities maybe have not been as familiar with it as we hope they will be in the years to come. I want to thank Representative Mike Day for also co-sponsoring the event tonight. Thank you so much. And Representative Paul Broder is also here with us tonight from Melrose. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank also our cultural councils from Stoneham, from Winchester, Reading, Wakefield, Melrose, and Malden, which are all the communities that I have the privilege of representing, all of whom are sponsoring the event tonight, and all of whom do, as we know, such wonderful work supporting the arts in each of our communities. So a big round of applause for them. And thank you also. We have a number of our other community leaders who are with us tonight, some on the panel and out there. And if we have time, well, we will have time certainly for questions and discussion a bit later in the evening, but I want to urge you to use that opportunity to also, particularly if you are with a local organization, an arts group, or any kind of local community group, make sure to introduce yourself and let us all know, who you are and what organization that you're with. So I'll just a few other comments that I'll share to sort of kick off the program tonight, and then of course we have an amazing panel of speakers that we'll turn it over to, and then we'll have time for questions and discussion. So I want to share with you a quote that I like from Pablo Picasso, who said, "The purpose of art is washing the dust of daily life off our souls." How could you say it better than that, right? Now, the arts, of course, rejuvenate our souls and enrich our humanity. But that's not all they do. The creative economy is an important engine of local economic development in our communities. And, of course, that's our topic tonight. Just a few quick numbers for you. In Massachusetts, the nonprofit arts and culture sector is a very significant industry. It generates more than $2 billion annually in total economic activity and supports more than 73,000 full-time equivalent jobs. And I'm sure you'll hear more about that from Anita Walker in a moment. Arts and culture also provides an impressive return on investment. For example, our state government's annual funding of roughly $14 million for the Massachusetts Cultural Council is estimated to deliver about a 7-to-1 return on investment. So for that very modest sum that we invest from our state budget in the Massachusetts Cultural Council. It's estimated about a 7-to-1 return on that investment based on the economic activity that is generated. And that's why I did want to mention to everybody that it is so important that the legislature restore the full $14 million in funding for the Massachusetts Cultural Council. I really appreciate my House colleagues tonight. They have already voted to override the governor's veto, and I expect the state Senate will do the same on Thursday. In addition to our investment in the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and of course through the MCC to our local cultural councils, the Commonwealth also finances the Massachusetts Cultural Facilities Fund, which some of you may not be familiar with. The CFF invests in the acquisition, the renovation, and the construction of nonprofit and municipal cultural facilities in our state. Over the past decade, the CFF has awarded grants of just over $100 million to help finance close to 800 projects across the state. And I believe the Greater Boston Theater Stage Company has been one of those recipients of that funding, and we hope will be a future recipient as well. Tonight, we will discuss the role the creative economy plays in our state's overall economy and how our communities can more proactively engage with the arts and culture as part of their local economic development strategy. And I was remiss earlier in not also thanking the Stoneham Chamber of Commerce for co-sponsoring the event tonight, and Jennifer Welter from the Chambers here, and that is because they recognize exactly that, the value to our local economy of the arts and culture. So we are very fortunate to have terrific speakers to help lead us in this conversation. First, we will hear from, to my left, Anita Walker, who is the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Cultural Council. Then we'll hear from Chris Carino, next over, and Steve Mayo. Chris is the chairman of the Albion Cultural Exchange Committee in Wakefield, and Steve Mayo is Wakefield Town Administrator. And they will share with you news of a very exciting creative economy project that is underway in the town of Wakefield that we're very proud of. And then our final speaker all the way to my far left is Jennifer Erickson, who is the Arts and Culture Manager for the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and who has been involved in the Albion project and will help us understand better how other communities can similarly leverage their arts and cultural sector as part of a thriving local economy. Want to thank Stoneham TV, who's here, and they are recording the conversation tonight. So for anyone who wasn't able to be with us in person, they will be able to watch this on either online or on local access television, and we thank Stoneham TV. So with that, again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your interest and your support for the arts. Particularly locally, and I'm going to turn it over now to the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Cultural Council, Anita Walker.
Thank you. Do you mind if I stay seated, or would you rather I stand? Sit, right? I'm so glad you started with that quote, because it reminds me of an even better quote. Because the better quote comes from his mother. And his mother saw great potential in her son, and she looked at him and said, "If you study religion, you'll become the Pope. If you study the military, you'll become a general." But he studied art, and he became Picasso. Well, I'm so delighted to be here, and I want to say how wonderful it is to see so many people in this community that are interested and excited about the cultural life of the place where you live. The absolute foundation of that, uniquely in Massachusetts, are the 329 local cultural councils in absolutely every city and town that are in every single legislative district in Massachusetts, and there is no other state in the nation that has that foundation of volunteers, and they, as you know, cultural council members, all volunteers who work so hard to make our communities culturally vibrant places to live. Beyond that, the Mass Cultural Council is so proud to be able to support the work that you do along with all of your partners in your communities. But I have to start out by saying thank you to the Senator and the Representative here in the room tonight and all of your colleagues on Beacon Hill. I know we ask you a lot to advocate on behalf of the MCC so that we're able to make the investments that you need to do the work that you want to do. And Matt Wilson's sitting in the room as well. He's the head of Mass Creative. You hear from him a lot, too, on behalf of the Mass Cultural Council and our work. And my advocacy boss, Greg Liakos, is also sitting down here in the front row, who managed to bypass a bit of his school board meeting so he could spend time on arts and culture, which he also tries to infuse into the schools in Wakefield and beyond. But I have to tell you, the wonderful thing about arts and culture in Massachusetts, and I think largely because of this unique platform of the local cultural councils that we have, you can't go anywhere in Massachusetts and escape the arts and culture. And that's because we have people everywhere who are making sure that everybody has an opportunity to participate. I want to tell you just a little bit, if you don't mind, when we get started, about the way that the Mass Cultural Council is working for you and the opportunities that we can provide you and your organizations and your communities to support the work you're doing. So, local cultural councils, first and foremost, if you are in the room and do not know who your local cultural council members are, just give us a call here at the Mass Cultural Council and we can connect you with your local cultural council, because that's really where everything starts. It's the second largest program that we fund in Massachusetts, and the genius behind it is that your local cultural councils are making their own grant-making decisions and their own investments. So they can just look out on their main street in their own backyard, and they know what your needs are, and they can talk with the people locally to make those kinds of investments. And I think that's why that's such a powerful force here in the Commonwealth. Actually, our largest grant-making program is what we call the Cultural Investment Portfolio. We are one of the few, if not only, sources of unrestricted operating support for cultural organizations. What does that mean? This is money that places like this theater can use as they see fit. And oftentimes it's to pay for the utility bills, it's to pay for staff salaries, it's to pay to sweep the snow off the sidewalk if it comes this year. It's really hard to find donations for those types of things. Donors get a lot of satisfaction out of things they can hang a plaque on, and utility bills and salaries and health insurance and all those things that have to be taken care of before this theater, for example, can even start to put on a play. All of that has to be paid for. And about the only source of that funding is the Massachusetts Cultural Council. We provide that funding to 400 nonprofit cultural organizations in the arts, humanities, and interpretive sciences. So when you think of the Mass Cultural Council, lots of times you think arts, but aquariums, zoos, historical societies, historic homes, think broadly, because we are here to serve that entire cultural package here in the Commonwealth. And if you're affiliated with any organization in the arts, humanities, or sciences, and you don't think they know about us, well, just give us a call, because we have a doorway into this funding program, and you can start with the project and move up into continuous operating support. So that's our second largest program, and it is truly the lifeblood of so many of our nonprofit cultural organizations. I wish I could say it's because the grants are so enormous. They're not yet. We're trying to get there. But it really is the leverage of these funds. The legislators know, because we tell them about every 5 minutes, for every single dollar the legislature invests through the Mass Cultural Council, $8 goes right back into the general fund. These are dollars that the legislature can use to address the other pressing issues of the day, whether it's potholes and infrastructure and roads and clean water and air, or education or poverty. And that's because in Massachusetts, anytime a resident comes to this theater, that night they will spend another $27 in local businesses. And if they come from out of town, they'll spend $47 and other businesses or hotels or other things that they're going to spend. So you can see how that's going to add up. You look at an audience in this theater, how those additional dollars, I'm not talking about the price of the ticket, I'm just talking about the additional dollars that they're spending, because you're not just going to go to the show, you got to get something to eat, right?
I eat every day.
You want to make an evening out of it. So those are sometimes not recognized as really part of what is the generator of such a significant return on investment when we invest in the arts and culture here in Massachusetts. We are extremely interested in the cultural vibrancy of our communities, and we have a variety of ways we invest in those. One we're very proud of is our Cultural District program. We started this program 5 years ago, and this was really a way to encourage communities to think about what's real and special and authentic about the place where they live, and to capitalize on that. Not just to attract visitors, because we love visitors and we love their money, but also to make their community a better place to live and a better place for the families all around the community. So we now have, in 5 years, 43 state-designated cultural districts. That's more than any other state in the country. And I don't think we have one here yet. And maybe we'll hear more about the possibilities a little bit later. But one of the great things that we love about the Cultural District program is we have discovered over the last 5 years that no matter where we go in Massachusetts, when we encounter communities that are interested in cultural districts, there are so many people who are interested in being involved in the arts and culture and doing something for their community, but they just haven't connected with each other. They just haven't found the one room to be in and the one table to all sit around and to all start rowing in the same direction. And more than anything else, the Cultural District gives these communities a platform to have that conversation and to start doing that planning together. Another feature of the Cultural District that we really like, and we're going to start encouraging more across the Commonwealth, even for communities that don't have a cultural district, is how critical the relationship is between our cultural leaders and City Hall, or Town Hall, as the case may be. We don't want the cultural activities to be operating in a separate sphere or not in connection with what the town plan and what the city plan is. Because when we pull all of those together and work together, we can really see some transformational impact. Thinking of a community on the north end, as north of Boston, and one of my favorite stories of a cultural district is Gloucester. Gloucester came into the program rather early. In fact, one of the first cultural districts was Rocky Neck. How many have been to Rocky Neck? It's obvious. You can just see it. Of course it's a cultural district. They didn't have to do anything. Yes, they did. But then as I looked around Gloucester, now what about you? We're thinking compact, we're thinking walkable, we're thinking, it has an identity, an obvious theme and identity that it wants to tell the story of. And I actually saw two other cultural districts there. I saw the harbor area, and the story of the fishing industry and the maritime story of the harbor of Gloucester, which felt like one story to me. And then I saw sort of the artists and the arts and culture in the downtown and the Cape Am, you're nodding, as a different culture district. So I saw two stories there. So one rainy day, as I was encouraging two cultural districts in Gloucester, I was kidnapped by Senator Bruce Tarr and Representative Anne Margaret Ferranti. And they put me in their car, and they drove me up to Gloucester, and they said, "We want this to be one cultural district." And I said, "I don't get it. It's really two stories. I think you have a chance for two cultural districts here." So they drove around, and they took me to this spot, and you'll recognize it if you go up to Gloucester. And it's this sort of precipice that overlooks the harbor. And on the top of the precipice is Fitzhenry Lane's home. He is the great maritime artist of New England. And there's kind of a statue of him sort of out on the point overlooking the harbor. He had polio, and every day he literally would drag himself and his paints out to this point to overlook the maritime scenery in front of him. And they said, "Anita, you can't separate the artist from the harbor," because it was the fishing industry that gave Fitzhenry Lane the content of his work. And it was Fitzhenry Lane who preserved for future generations the fishing industry. So now that's Gloucester Harbortown Cultural District, one cultural district. So I encourage you, and I know you're thinking about one in this area, but think about what's real special and authentic, and think about the story you have to tell, because that's really the most compelling part about making a cultural district. And I think it's one of the most exciting conversations that communities have together when they start thinking of what is the real source of pride that we have, and that goes beyond generations or one particular building or one thing, but what is really our collective identity in this place. And I can tell you, Massachusetts to me is probably unique in any place in the country because of how deeply rooted citizens are to their communities, and what a strong sense of identity, you probably know this already from your work, that people have in their cities and towns. So the Cultural District program, I really encourage. It's a great starting point for conversation. And they come in all shapes and sizes. They are in big cities, and they are little. We are in Turners Falls, we're in Shelburne Falls, we're in Lynn, we're in Pittsfield, we're in North Adams. So there's no, set size or shape or story that goes with a cultural district. It's your size, it's your shape, and it's your story. And I think it's actually one of the greatest programs we have, the Mass Cultural Council. Another program what we just launched, I think it was about a year and a half ago, is a program to support festivals in Massachusetts. And last year we funded more than 200 festivals. We put it in the category of our easy peasy grant programs, meaning it take you 10 minutes to fill out the application and you'll find out right away. It's not some laborious enterprise to apply for funding. I think they're $500 grants. Not a huge amount of money, but for a festival, it's hard to raise $500. What we love about festivals and why we want to support them is because festivals have the lowest barrier to entry to participate in the arts and culture. People who could have no intention of taking part in an arts activity can just stumble into one downtown on Main Street or in the park or on the Common where a festival happens to be going on. And generally, these are free to attend, and a lot of people feel more comfortable on their first experience in the arts if they don't feel trapped where the door closes behind them and they can come and go with their family and the kids could be loud and run around. So we love festivals, and we really want to encourage this kind of activities. They're low barrier to entry. They are organized by communities. We love that civic engagement component of them. They can be part of a branding around a community. I mean, the Art and Garlic Festival, now if that doesn't brand a town, I don't know what does. And you all know about the Sand Sculpture Festival in Revere. I mean, I say Sand Sculpture Festival, you think Revere. So it's a way for communities to brand themselves and sort of capitalize on that identity that they love so much about their community. So we love the festivals program, and that's another new one that we've been rolling out. Another area of our work that I think is incredibly important is our work with youth. The Mass Cultural Council, and I say that with all modesty, Greg will back me up on this, is a national leader in work that we call creative youth development. These are our investments in programs that support young people, particularly adolescents, and particularly young people who are having difficulty transferring into adulthood. Programs you may be familiar with would be Raw Arts in Lynn, Artists for Humanity in Boston, Medicine Wheel, ZoomX. These are probably familiar programs to you. But the features of these programs that make them different than youth arts is they provide a safe place for young people who don't have safety in their lives. They may have hostility at home, they may live in an unsafe neighborhood, they may be feeling unsafe psychologically because as they're trying to find their own identities. So it's a safe place, number one. Number two, artistic rigor. These programs are all taught by professional artists with attention to artistic rigor. It's not macaroni on a paper plate. I mean, it's real intense study into the arts. Relationships are built. Relationships with caring adults, relationships with peers, and these are ongoing relationships. These aren't drop-in program, once-a-week program, 5-day summer camp programs, but these are programs that really stick with the kids throughout their entire lives. These are programs that look at these young people not as broken, that need to be fixed or served, but as young people with agency who have an opportunity to craft their own path for their future. And in fact, our test for the success of these programs, the question we ask isn't, do you play the violin better or do you paint a better picture? The question, how does the young person answer the question, do I matter and can I make a difference in my community? So these are all programs that are also built on a platform of social justice. And for the first time last year, because of the sense of agency and our attention to the fact that these are young people creating their own path and helping their own communities, we started giving grants directly to the youth for their own projects. So we had Boston City Singers who, recognizing the terrible refugee problem in America, created a concert and fundraiser to support refugees. We had a young man who'd come out of incarceration who is studying film at one of our organizations and is making a film which is going to be used by the Department of Human Services to help their workers understand what it's like to be a teenager going through incarceration. So the ability and the sense that I can have an influence on my own community is probably one of the most powerful attributes that a young person can come out of these programs with. So creative youth development is really central to the work that we do. We also have a program that has the same characteristics called SARE, which is for music, and it's an Elsa Stama-inspired set of programs that we have in Massachusetts. Other programs that you should probably know about, Big Yellow School Bus. We've been running this for about 10 years now, and this is where we fund good old-fashioned field trips from school to the Stoneham Theater, to the aquarium, to the MFA. As Greg will tell you, school districts have their back against the wall trying to make their budgets. And we noticed that one of the first things that are cut when school districts are stressed are field trips. Now you think, a field trip. What's so big about a field trip? It's a big deal to thousands of kids who would never see a masterwork of art, would never see a professional play, would never get a chance to touch an eel if it weren't for that one field trip. And you have no idea the impact that that one experience, that one exposure to the arts or the sciences or history will have on a young person and what it might spark for the rest of their lives. So field trip sounds, Big Yellow School Bus, easy, really important. And we sent about 100,000 kids in Massachusetts on field trips in the Big Yellow School Bus program. We are also interested in supporting a lot of empty time that kids have in out-of-school and after-school time. So we created a partnership about 5 years ago with Mass After School Partnership, created the first ever arts curriculum to be used in out-of-school and after-school time, because you know, kids, the school bell rings, it's permeable. They're still there. They just don't have anything to do. So we provide training to out-of-school and after-school time caregivers. Many of these are caring adults who don't have a lot of professional training, don't have a community of after-school time workers to learn from and benefit from being part of a community. So we create the communities, we provide the training, we provide the curriculum, and I think we're now in more than 600 out-of-school, after-school time locations with what we call Creative Minds Out of School. So we're interested in reaching our young people where they are. Probably one of our most popular programs is a program we call STARS. And this is the program where we send artists or historians or scientists into the classroom for residencies. And I always try to tell this story for inspiration to any legislator within hearing distance of me. These are applications that we receive from teachers. This isn't us imposing our artistic evangelism on the schools. This is teachers coming to us saying, I want an artist in my classroom. And so we have, again, one of our Easy Peasy grant programs. We open up for applications. We've doubled funding for this program every year for the last 5 years. Last year, we opened in the fall. I think we're just about ready to do that. The money was gone in 33 minutes. And our goal is to get to $1 million in funding. We were going to do that in one of the larger versions of our budget that we had imagined this year, but that's our goal, so that any teacher who wants an artist residency and an artist in the classroom can have a chance to have that, and maybe it'll take an hour before we run out of money for that program. But I really think nobody knows more than teachers about what's effective in a child's learning, and the STARS program, I think, is probably one of the most powerful ones that we have out there. We're one of the last state arts agencies agencies in America that actually provides funding to artists. Yes. We provide funding to artists, and we provide for artist fellowships. They're $13,000. These are all based on excellence. And of course, our local cultural councils also support the work of artists in their communities. But we feel this is core. Artists and the work of artists are core. And we're going to be rolling out a couple of new pilot programs this year to help communities do an inventory to find the artists in their communities. Many communities don't even know who their artists are or where they are. So this will be some funding to help you do an inventory of the artists in the community. And then the second area of need for artists is places to work. Artist workspace. So we have another product, again, we're going to be piloting this year in a few communities on helping cities and towns figure out what spaces might be good or available to provide to artists for galleries or work or live space. So those are two new things to support our artists that we're going to be doing this year. And then finally, I'm sure I've forgotten half the stuff we do. Greg's probably ticking them off. The Cultural Facilities Fund. This is huge. 10 years, we've invested $100 million in cultural infrastructure in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And about 80% of the funding that we invest, again, it's not the glamorous stuff, folks. It's the leaky roofs, it's the accessibility issues, it's the septic tanks. We do those. HVAC, we love HVAC. Honestly, HVAC is a beautiful thing to us. We fund a lot of HVAC. And it is to you when you're sitting in a theater on a hot night. So that's going to be coming up this year. We were just talking for renewal for another 5 years. But that has put more than 25,000 construction workers, designers, engineers, plumbers, electricians, everybody who works in the construction industry. Those have been jobs, real jobs have been created by the Cultural Facilities Fund, on top of which another 2,000 permanent jobs have been created in the organizations that participate. We put $100 million into that program. Let's do the math. $100 million we put in the last 10 years, that has leveraged $2.6 billion with a B dollars from the private sector to match our $100 million. We require a one-to-one match. We overperformed. But that, again, is why this is such a fantastic public-private partnership. I'm going to pass the mic on here because we got a couple other speakers, but I wanted you to know about the kind of support that we have available to you in your communities. And if there's something I didn't say and you're thinking, gee, I wonder if I could get some help with this, don't hesitate to give us a call. But I want you to know that we are really interested in vibrant, culturally rich communities and making sure that everybody has a chance to participate. Oh, I got to just do one more. One more, because this is brand new. And I am so proud of our field for this. We just launched a program this summer called EBT Card to Culture. Do you know what an EBT card is? These are, I used to call them the food stamps card, but it's the card that people at the poverty level receive from the state to help them access food and so forth. We wanted our organizations to accept the presentation of the EBT card as admission or discounted admission to cultural events, because everybody should get to come to the play here, not just the people who can afford a ticket. We put the word out. In a week, we've got 147 cultural organizations all over Massachusetts that now take the EBT card as discounted admission or free admission to anything anybody else gets to see, not just special stuff, not just a certain night of the week, not just the free Fridays, anything. That EBT card gets that family in the door. And it's being, one of the things we don't know how to do very well is how to let everybody with the EBT card know that this is available to them. So that's what the Division of Transitional Assistance is doing for us. They're promoting it to the EBT card holders and their regional offices on the mobile apps. And this is a huge advance in accessibility, which is a real focus of the Mass Cultural Council. Okay.
All right.
Well, I got the luck of following that, huh? I want to thank Senator Lewis for putting this together, and I want to follow up on the theme that how important arts and culture are to the local economy. We're all here, I think most of us here are citizens of small to mid-sized communities. And downtown is hard. Downtown is hard to maintain today. We struggle with that in Wakefield. I'm sure we struggle with that in Stoneham and other communities. People need a reason to leave their house. They need a reason to get from behind their computer screen and order that online. Retail is hard. Retail is hard everywhere. That's why even these malls are changing. And I think what we have found in Wakefield, and we had a sense that we were right on this, and we got confirmed as we went along, is that we needed to give people a reason to leave their homes. We needed to give people a reason to downtown. We needed to give them something to experience. And it's not just going to dinner. You can go to dinner anyway. You can, buy it and cook it at home. You can get pretty gourmet stuff in the stores now and cook it at home if you want. We needed to give people a reason to come out, and we really felt in our bones that it was arts and culture. It was enjoying, whether it's a poetry reading or an art show or bread making or flower arranging or anything like that. People need a reason to come out. So we thought that's the path that we should be taking. So in Wakefield, we decided to really do something unheard of. We did a marketing study of ourselves. How do we market Wakefield? How do we market that experience? What is the audience that we are marketing to? Kind of, almost running it like a business. So we brought in a company called Fine Point, a wonderful woman who came in and she interviewed people and gave us a lot of insight into where we are. And I think, here being in the Greater Boston, I'm an old Stoneham board member, so bear with me if I call it the Stoneham Theater for one more day anyway. And we're kind of in the same circle. If you drew a circle around Wakefield, we're in the same circle of demographics, basically. And we found that within a 2-mile radius of our downtown Wakefield, you had a lot of people, maybe 40,000 people that lived in that, and an average family income of over $100,000. Kind of an interesting statistic when you think of it. So how do we market to that? How do we look at what people are looking for? What do they want? And we came back that they all wanted an experience. They wanted to go out and have something to do, and that could be music, that could be what have you. So we kind of thought about how do we move that forward, how do we support arts and culture, how do we support that experience, but we didn't have a home. And we had no home to do that in, and I spent a lot of time working with my colleagues, with the Board of Selectmen, and luckily something did become available. We had a town building that was used by our town electric company, gas and electric company, that was actually owned by the town. Building in the middle of our downtown. It was used as a billing center and what have you, and offices. It has a first floor, which is a pretty good gallery space, and has, 8 offices upstairs? And Chris will talk about this later. 8 offices upstairs that are almost set up like loft spaces, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. So we kind of thought about how does keeping this building and using it to promote arts and culture, how does that work into our vision of creating this economic engine downtown, this experience downtown? So our Board of Selectmen in Wakefield, a great group. They were not tempted by the calls of the community to sell the building. Sell it, you're going to get $1 million. Well, we probably wouldn't have got $1 million. It has no parking, and it needs a lot of work, so we'll need another one of those grants, Greg. And we have one. We need one more to get it going. But, they had to stand tall and say, we're not going to do that, even though economic times are tight and there's a lot of people, looking for money. So I got to give my board a lot of credit. Our board had the vision to retain the building, and it's starting to become the hub of this arts and cultural area that Chris will talk about in a couple of minutes. So we then, get another study, and I got to say that sometimes we're overstudied, but in this case we weren't. We really worked with the MAPC, and a great job that they did, and Jennifer will talk about this in a minute. And we asked them to do something a little bit different. to really look at this as an arts corridor, what this could do to our community and what it could mean as an arts corridor. And boy, did they do that. And they talked about what some strategies that we can take. In fact, Jennifer talked to me about, hey, did you hire that person yet that we mentioned in one of our takeaways? No, we haven't, but we're working on it. So we had just had a meeting on that today. And we now have a building that needs a lot of work. It has HVAC problems. It has accessibility problems, but we have the spot. So if we work on it, we're hoping that people will come. And when you talk about what the money means to the local economy, and go back to that marketing study that Fine Point did earlier on, and they know statistically, demographically, what people spend on entertainment in our demographic area. And if you go out even 4 miles, it gets a little bit larger. But let's look at 2 miles. A lot of money is spent within 2 miles of the middle of downtown Wakefield just on entertainment, let alone the multiplier when you get to restaurants. So if you look at what is spent by people in that demographic group in downtown Wakefield on entertainment, and we were to capture 3% of that, just 3% of that, that would bring in almost $2 million annually into our local economy. So when people talk about, the importance of the arts, and I come from a long history of teachers, and my dad was superintendent of Wakefield Public Schools, and when times were tough, boy, was he pushed every year to cut the arts. And God bless him, he never did it. He would not let the arts be cut disproportionately with anybody else. So I think that it's a resurgence. It's so important to our local economy. It's an economic engine. And we are going to go forward and really are using it as our overall strategy of how to make that downtown, which are hard, how to make that better. So I think you're going to see us, maybe some of my board members aren't here. I'll get a little bit ahead of them, which you should never do in my business. Street murals, I see that in our future, bringing people downtown. I see the street as a stage, and that is a huge venture that we're working on right now. We're actually looking at our entire downtown with bump outs, and I understand now that I've learned all this. There's even companies that will come and kind of do a formed what it will look like permanently, so you can kind of see what that corner is going to look like. And I can see public piano. In fact, maybe you can talk about the piano we have. I can see poetry. He's writing it down. See, I gave him an idea. Poetry readings, carol singers, and just moving on the festivals that we've done. But we have the place, and with the real help of Anita, your group here, and Mr. Liakos, my friend on the school committee, and our great state delegation, we're moving forward with this. I wrote down cultural district story to tell. We're going to have that story to tell, so we're going to be the next one. So I want to thank you for having me. I'll be here for questions, but I do want to turn it over to Chris. So thank you.
All right. Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Chris Carino. I'm the chairman of the Albion Cultural Exchange Committee, and we are the group that is in charge of the Albion Cultural Exchange building. We run the building, everything from emptying the trash to doing all the programming. To give you a little bit of history of, actually we'll start with, our tagline is promoting arts, culture, and commerce. And so in the next few minutes, I'll sort of cover how we've done that and where we came from and where we see ourselves going. So the Albion Cultural Exchange Committee was formed in August 2015 or so by the Board of Selectmen in Wakefield, and we sat the committee around November. The committee met in November. We sat down and said, okay, what do we do now? And we talked about it for a little bit, and quickly through our town planner, Paul Revis, we started connecting with MAPC, talking about grants, and Senator Lewis talking about other ways to get money, and working on that. And my committee decided that we immediately wanted to start providing programming. We didn't want to sit around and do planning for a long time. We just immediately wanted to kick the building off, get it going, find out what the holdups might be, and tackle those first, and do the grander scheme things as we go, but just be open for business immediately. And so we started with a reception for the Wakefield Cultural Council. It was a grant recipient reception. It was our first event. Senator Lewis was there. And we did that, and not to be, outdone or be shy about it, we did another major event the very next day, which was the High School Advanced Placement Art Show. And if you're not familiar with that, the AP Art program is outstanding. It's basically professional artists in the little bodies of high school students. And so it's amazing, the stuff that was up there, and then you looked over and you were like, what? Huh? And so we put this together, and people thought that I was going to want to go through a long planning process, and I wanted to open up the doors. And when initially sort of the permission, they asked me, because I guess I was in charge because I was the chairman, and they said, would you do that? And I said, well, only really under one condition. And they were like, well, what's that? And I said, we have to go big. I want a red carpet. And they were like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. So we got a red carpet, and we did 2 events in a row. We opened up the facility with 2 red carpet events. And so the high school seniors and the people that went to the grant recipient reception all got to walk the red carpet, come into our building. It wasn't, completely done. We were still doing some vacuuming and some painting and stuff, but we were open for business, and we had a red carpet. So we looked really good. The AP Art students loved it. And it's now become a tradition. We did it again this year. And so now it's the AP Art students look forward to it. It's like little Hollywood. I actually said to them that I wanted spotlights and stuff out front to make it look like Hollywood, but we hold the event in May, so it's light out till like 8 o'clock. That didn't work. But a red carpet worked. And the red carpet was awesome. And the red carpet is now a tradition that we have there. So that's sort of how we started. Those were our first 2 events. And we're figuring out, okay, how do we program this building? What do we do? And getting the arts, culture, and the commerce side of things, and how do we do this? We looked at things, and we found we settled on First Thursday, but there's First Monday, Last Friday. There's all different versions of it. We settled on First Thursday, got a structure together, and we held our First Thursday event. It's called First Thursday Downtown, and it's promoting the art, culture, and commerce. And we try to hook in businesses. We try to do the street as a stage. We try to do downtown as a destination. All of that stuff we're trying to pull into it. And so the way that we did that is we started with this First Thursday program, and we had 2 art studios and a furniture store do an art event. And so, hey, it's great. We finished our first event, but then, oh, wait, we got to do it again. How do we do that? And so we started talking about things like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to convince people to come to an art show? I mean, we could have Picasso, but if I had Jimmy, the 10th grader, I'll get more people. If I say, hey, Picasso's coming, everybody come, they don't show up. So, how are we going to do this, and how's it going to be exciting? How many times can I promote looking at a photo or doing this? And so we came up with this thing called the See-Do methodology. And the See-Do methodology says that 1 month, you're going to see stuff on First Thursday, like an art exhibit, like a movie, something like that. And then the next month, you're going to have the opportunity to be engaged in that and go interactive and do stuff. So the way that works out is we would have an art show, followed by a paint night, followed by a movie, we did wreath making. We did Mackenzie Child, if anybody's familiar with that, very high-end designer. We did a mock Mackenzie Child wreath making event. And so that's our see-do mentality, and that's not that there wouldn't be 2 C's in a row, but ideally it's see-do, see-do. And that gave us a structure, and also having First Thursday and just incubating it and making sure that we didn't skip a month, that we were always consistent, that people could rely on First Thursday being there. We started bringing in the businesses, and we said, hey, you know what? We're going to need money at some point, but for First Thursday, we'll do advertising for free on our webpage to incorporate you into it. And we want to go with the clustering concept. So how do we do that? Well, give us an offer where if you show up to our event, you leave with the ticket, you get a free appetizer at the restaurant. So you either go to dinner and come to our event, or come to our event and then go to dinner, something like that. And so that seemed to be really successful, and we started to bring people in and do that. So, how did we interact with the business community on the whole? Well, as Steve mentioned, we have flower arranging classes with a company called Sweet Bay, which is 3 doors down. And we talked to them about rent and how to do these things, and she was really hardcore on me, wanting to know the rent. And I told her that we were trying to build a relationship, and rent was secondary, and we'll figure it out. And they're a local business to us, and so they help us now at this point, because we weren't really pushing hard on the rent. We just wanted free tickets to their event, and we gave those tickets away and we engaged them. Now they put wreaths on our doors. They do the plantings that are in front. And Liz, who runs that program, I can call her up if there's a problem, because she's 3 doors down, and say, hey, can you run in the building and find out what the heck's going on and not have to leave the office? And that's a bonus too. So that was the Sweet Bay, the local florist company. We've had Stoneham's own Joe Gatto, if you're familiar with him. Joe Gatto is a reality TV star, and he's also a personal chef. We had him in, and he made mozzarella. That was a really good event, and we promoted it through Reading, Wakefield, Melrose, and when we talked to people that were there, we had a sprinkling of people from all the communities. So it really was sort of a regional thing. We just did an ancient grains discussion with the place called the Bread Shop. And that was a very successful, culture and commerce event. And that people came there. They did the grains discussion. They talked about why wheat's good or bad. That's a big discussion for people who get into that. That's a big deal. They talked about it, and then at the end of it, we walked down to their store and we saw their ovens. We baked some bread, and everybody left with as much bread as they could handle. Those girls were really freaked out because we scheduled the event, and they'd never done an event like this. At this point, I'm an expert because I've done 12 of them. And so I don't know how many tickets have we sold, and they wanted to bail. They were just worried and nervous. And I was just like, listen, the show must go on. We're going to get through this. No big deal. And so we did it, and we had 20 people or something to that effect. Everybody went home with bread. Everybody was awesome. We were walking back to the store, or to the cultural exchange from their store after everybody left, and they looked at me and they were like, thank you for being so positive. Thank you for helping us out. We were really, wigging. I just want to let you know, we've had the busiest day that we've ever had since we've been in existence. We picked up an extra farmer's market. We had to be here, there, and everywhere. We were looking to bail. Thank God you didn't let us bail. We sold, 600 loaves of bread that day, and then came and did our seminar. And then they said they were going home to sleep for 3 days. So, that was good, but they were quick. And coaching people through doing events is its own art form, because you teach people to do events that have never done events before. You say, hey, let's do this event. And they're gung-ho 45 days out. And as it gets closer, they really need that reassurance. And we've got a system at this point. And the show must go on, and let's do this. And you run a business, you run a bread store, you've never done this before. I'll show you how. And hey, and you know what? It's okay if you bomb, because nobody's going to know. They don't know what, we haven't defined what good or bad is. So we did that. But other things that we've done, let's see here. We did the furniture store. I mentioned that. We talk about being open late on Thursdays, doing our activities there, and doing the activity clustering, which is, the same as the destination kind of stuff. As far as the schools, how do we interact with the schools? I mentioned the Advanced Placement Art Show. That show, aside from just being awesome because of the red carpet, which is really cool, the art's great. Benefit of doing a school show is that you have a built-in audience. So chances are the advertising is going to be a little bit easier because everyone's going to come to see their kid. And then we added the JV art show. So we did the red carpet one, and now we have the JV art show, but they don't get a red carpet. They weren't happy about that. And I said, well, you need to make it to the AP. If you make it down there, you don't just get a red carpet, despite that I pushed it in the first time, but, we did that. And we also have had a group called She Major, which is an a cappella group from the high school, and they come in, and those shows are definitely well attended. She Major, I'm working with them on a holiday show that'll be coming up. We haven't announced it, but it'll be sometime in December. And then talking about local artist groups and how we work with them. Right from the get-go, two of our committee members are members of the Arts Collaborative of Wakefield. And it's Kathy Fry and Joy Schilling, who's also the director of the high school art department. So they've got a website, and they do similar to what you were just talking about. They have an inventory of all the local artists. And we talked with MAPC and a bunch of people about that's important. And so we integrated that with our website. So if you go to the Albion Cultural Exchange website, albionculturalexchange.org for anybody with a smartphone, we have the artist directory built into that. And so you can go through and see who all the visual artists are. The Arts Collaborative of Wakefield are just visual artists, but in the crowd tonight here we have Colleen Getty somewhere. It's all bright. And she brings in a thing called the Room to Write, and those are writers, and they don't fall into the Arts Collaborative of Wakefield sort of category. So Colleen sort of has her own night, and she's taken off on the whole writer thing, and we hope to get more people in there. And she's had several successful events, and is also very good at running events. One of my favorite people to run events. So good job, Colleen. Love that. So we're doing that. So we have the artist registry. We have the Room to Write. The Reading Symphony Orchestra is now meeting in our building. I just joined their board, and they're doing just board meetings there, but I'm pretty positive that's going to roll into doing smaller. They do concerts at our Galvin Middle School and other places in Reading, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have smaller event venue things with them, and they're getting used to the building, and they're coming in there. We already have some synergies of things that'll go on as far as revenue for our building. So we talked about artist workspaces, and we've got 8 slots upstairs, and so our master plan with MAPC that's not part of the programming is, hey, let's rent those out for $300, $400, $500 a month, something in the reasonable range. The people that are in those artist workspaces, once we work through the leases, will end up becoming part of our First Thursday signature program a couple times a year. And the revenue that's generated from that will hopefully go towards some funding that we need to improve the building. So it's sort of cyclical. The people upstairs pay rent, which pays for the rent downstairs, and they also help provide programming for downstairs. It's a win-win for everybody involved. We put maybe a short time frame on the leases of a year or two so that we can cycle the artists through and have them leave the building but stay in the district. So you work in the building and maybe you're just getting going, and then after a year you're kind of known, you're starting to sell stuff, and now you know everybody downtown because we've got the community. It's called the Albion Cultural Exchange, not the Albion's Art Building, not the Wakefield Art Center. And Steve and I looked at I looked at 3,000 names. I brought him the top list of, we didn't want to use the word actually art because it's confusing. We didn't want to use the word Wakefield because it's confusing with other things. We wanted to use the word Albion. We first checked to make sure that the word Albion didn't have a double meaning of something that was bad. It turns out it doesn't. It's a perfect fit. Albion refers to the white shores of Dover, the big island of Great Britain, and other things that are considered pure and good. Albion is also a local Wakefield name in that I believe it was 1842, our historical person, smack me if I'm off, it might have been 1872, but Albion Street was one of the first named streets in Wakefield. It's an important identity piece. We wanted to keep it. Cultural, that made sense. The art part, again, we kind of ruled out using that word. We were like cultural, and then we came up with exchange. Why? Because we want people to exchange ideas. We've had Donald Wong in there. He did a Qigong seminar. We've had other people in there that have done things that are kind of outside of looking at pictures and that stuff. We've dabbled with the idea of maybe doing some health and wellness stuff because it's all about being one. It's all about sharing this common experience of life and art and just enjoying things and not being robots. So that's sort of where we've gone with that. So we've participated with the high school people. We've participated with the businesses. We've participated with the local arts organizations. We feel happy about that. We've come a long way. We started with our building. We had to do some painting. We had to do a bunch of other things. Our building's usable. We're working with architects about ADA compliance and doing a stepped approach. But my committee, our goal was really to just get it going. Don't sit in a room for 2 years talking about this arts thing we're going to do. We were given a building. Let me say that again. We were given a building. That's a big deal. So we got the thing going. We got everything. It made everything happen. And so we're looking to do some infrastructure stuff. We're looking to do some more funding. And we're looking to continue to develop our programming. Now, we have something coming up, and I want to invite everybody here to our First Thursday signature program. And we haven't got the press out on this, but it's going to come out tomorrow, and I'm inviting everybody here. Are you familiar with the Market Basket strike a few years ago? Okay, you lived through it, right? It's kind of probably pretty personal. You probably had a couple bad days and had to change your life because of it. Well, there was a movie produced about that. It's called Food Fight. And it was produced locally, and we actually did a viewing of it earlier in the year in March, and we coordinated it with Restaurant Week, which was called Local Eats Week last year. So we had that event, and it was part of the Arts, Culture, and Commerce. We kicked off Local Eats Week with the showing of Food Fight, and we had a sold-out house in March, which is important for a couple reasons. One, because we like a sold-out house, but as far as commerce goes in our restaurants, and when me and Steve talk about the economic activity, towards the end of the winter, we need to get people out of their houses. We need to get them in the restaurants. It's March or August when people are on vacation that we want to do these types of things. And so it worked out great. We had the Food Fight movie viewing, and of course, you've probably had this experience in your life. Everybody said they didn't know about it. A bunch of people knew about it because we had a sold-out room, but they asked us to show it again. We're going to show it again. We're going to announce it tomorrow. Everybody here is invited. We're going to do questions tonight. If you don't get to me, please come next Thursday, October 5th, and see Food Fight with us from 7 to 9. And if you don't want to see the movie, you just want to talk, come on over. We can talk about whatever you want. I'm very reachable. ccarino@wakefield.ma.us. I can hand out cards. You can get me through the Albion Cultural Exchange website. If anybody has any questions, definitely let me know. And thank you very much.
If I can, I'm sorry. I'll follow up on a couple of things here, and I do want to again thank our state delegation. Paul Broder's walking out. He did a great job for us, as did Jason Lewis. The whole CDO method was something that we talked about with Chris. Building is not perfect. It is far from perfect. We put some paint on the walls, cleaned up the rug a little bit. There is one bathroom. That's horrible, and it's 17 blocks away. No, but it's tough to get to. Right now, we're going through, we're going to do a lot of improvements to the building. I'm really worried about if we have to shut this down for a month while we get things done. I think people are going to go crazy. That's how populous this has become. And one more thing, the art show with the AP students, this is one of the most wonderful events you'll ever go to. So when we have it, when do we have it? What time of year? In the spring? May. And what they're showing you is they're showing you their AP portfolio. They're taking an AP exam for college, and part of it is that they send their portfolio out and have it reviewed. And they're showing you their portfolio. And there's nothing like haggling with an 18-year-old, because now they're going to sell them, right? They need to make money for school, what have you. You're haggling with them over their ceramic that they made, their painting and what have you. And not really haggling because you like to give these kids a little bit extra. They are so thrilled that they sold a piece of art for $100. Oh my God, some of it goes back to the high school program. Joy McCarty makes them leave some with them for the next kids. And they walk out of there with a little bit of money. The last thing on very anecdotal, we had an art show this summer for a young man who tragically died way too young. He was an undiscovered artist. And we must have had hundreds of people in that building, to the point where I was like a little bit worried, like we are breaking every fire code in the world, having all these people in here and looking at. He had wonderful art. Walking out of there later on that night, walking by every restaurant in town was filled with people that I had seen at the art show. So much to the point that it was very hard to get a seat anywhere in downtown Wakefield that night because where the people went. So it does add to the economy. Don't be afraid to take the leap with the help of people like our state delegation, my board, and the MAPC. There you go.
Thank you. There's clearly a lot of passion around all of this work that's happened in Wakefield, so it's so wonderful to hear you both talk about the backstory. And I just actually want to get a feel for who's in the room. I can't help it, I'm a planner. I like to know. Who here is from Malden? If you could just raise your hand. Awesome. Who's here from Melrose? Great. How about Reading? And Stoneham? Awesome. And how about Winchester? Great. So your region is well represented tonight. So my name is Jennifer Erickson. I work at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We serve the 100... Sorry? Oh, Wakefield. Thank you. Yes. So I work for MAPC. We're the regional planning agency serving the 101 cities and towns located within 495. I actually used to staff the North Suburban subregion of MAPC, which includes all of your communities between 2012 and 2014. So I see a lot of familiar faces. It's great to see people from the Tri-Community Bikeway, from the Chinese Culture Connection in Malden, and some other community advocates that I recognize. So I'm going to talk a little bit about MEPC's support for arts and culture and why we were so excited to partner with Wakefield and how we're very eager to offer our services to other cities and towns in the region. So first I'll step back and say I'm also an artist in addition to being a planner. I'm a ceramic artist, and it's an important part of my identity and who I am. And I think probably for many of us, like, we're creative in many different ways. Whether or not we do art full time, it's a real part of who we are. And it's also a really important part of how we engage with other people in our communities. So I'd like to talk about arts and culture, not just from an economic development lens, but also from a public health and social wellness lens. I felt like I heard nuggets of that. Like, the reason why you named this the Cultural Exchange in our arts and culture is that it's really about creating this space for people to connect, to feel the sense of connection within your community. And that's really powerful. I think that's, sometimes it's hard to put a name and describe the importance of arts and culture. But it really is such an important part of our health and wellness and our cohesion as communities and our identity. So I just want to acknowledge that. So MAPC, we have a regional plan that governs our work. It's called Metro Future, and it consists of goals and strategies that outline the many ways in which you can support creating a livable and vital region. In Metro Future, we have a lot of goals and strategies pertaining to arts and culture. We talk about how heritage is an important part of how people engage with the places and spaces where they live and travel and work. And it also talks about the creative economy. And it also talks about, cultural districts. So all of this language was in Metro Future, but we never really had dedicated planning staff to really advance those arts and cultural goals and strategies. So I started with MAPC about 8.5 years ago. And one of the reasons I was attracted to arts and culture was because I was involved with this community project to install public art in my neighborhood. And the person facilitating it was an urban planner. So that was actually my introduction to planning. So over the years, our executive director was very interested in this idea of devoting resources to advance arts and cultural planning. And about 2 years ago, we received some interest from a private funder who was very interested in allowing us to have some additional resources for our agency to expand in arts and cultural planning. So in April of this year, we established an arts and culture division. We have 3 staff, myself included. I'm really a generalist planner. I've done economic development plans, housing production plans, other types of plans, and arts and culture is the latest. And so we also hired a regional arts and culture planner, and she has experience doing cultural planning and working with arts and cultural organizations. We also have on staff an artist in residence. She's with us 3 days a week for an 18-month term. And we created space for someone like her because we feel like it's not just about us doing planning work in communities, it's also about bringing in an artist so that someone like her can start to learn the language of planning and also change the way how we as government work and how we think about engaging communities creatively. So we have a full team, and we've been very busy. And even before we established the Arts and Cultural Division, we were talking with a lot of our communities in the region to ask, how can we support you in advancing your arts and cultural agenda? I remember back in 2014, I talked to Paul Revis when I was a coordinator, and he said, we're really thinking about how to revitalize our downtown. We have some people in the arts community that are interested in supporting arts and culture, so there were many seeds of interest that I was hearing from our communities. So it's really great to see, that this has really been a slow build, right, to get to this point. And it really takes a dedication of people like you, Chris, and people like you, Steve Mayo. So it's really about finding those local civic leaders and also community advocates that help create the demand for this kind of planning work. So I will say that in this region, in Reading, we did an economic development plan back in 2014, and there's language in there around public art and placemaking as being an important part of their economic development strategy. We also did a regional North Suburban priority mapping project between 2012 and 2014 with 8 of the communities in the North Suburban region. And in that action plan, I believe there was also some language around engaging arts and culture to advance regional identity and regional economic development. So, we're very invested in doing this work. We have a full team of staff, and also with the support of this funder, additional funding to our public agency to allow us to work with cities and towns to do this kind of planning work. So that's what I would offer. Glad to tell you more about MAPC as we get into discussion, answer other questions.
So tremendously exciting, so much food for thought. I'm sure just like me, many of you, our heads are spinning and thinking about all these great ideas and how do we leverage them. Our speakers have done such a great job, I think, inspiring us, with what's possible. I think from conversations I've had with people, I know there's a lot of interest in some of our communities and cultural districts, and maybe we'll have some more conversation about that. I'm sure people are thinking about, okay, how do we take lessons from what Wakefield's been doing or other communities? MAPC is a fantastic resource. Folks may not have known about that before. I actually didn't know that about the new Arts and Culture Division within MAPC. That's a tremendous resource we should, in our communities, look to take advantage of. So let's open it up for questions and discussion. I don't think we have microphones out there, or do we, Matt? We do on the side. Okay, so we do have microphones. Probably best if you would use them, just so we make sure everyone can hear you. Just tell us when you go to the microphone. Tell us who you are, and what if there's any particular affiliation you want to share with us, and we'd love to hear from you. So, microphones either side, I guess. Who wants to lead us off? Anyone? Oh, Jennifer. Yeah. Can you get out from your seat, or are you kind of stuck right there? Okay. I think try to use the microphones. I think it will help in terms of everybody hearing you. And also for Stoneham TV, right?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I just wanted to know, early on, you mentioned the idea of putting together an inventory of artists as a first step. And I thought that was just a great idea. It gets the energy going. The momentum going for a project, any kind of project really that you could then leap from. So I just wanted to know if you could explain a little bit more about maybe the timing, what that took, what you asked for, how receptive artists were for that.
So this is a new opportunity that the Mass Cultural Council is offering, and so we're going to test drive this initiative this year, and probably maybe looking at 2 or 3 communities who are really interested in doing some artist inventories. The first thing we want to know is, why do you want to do an artist inventory? Because we think it's really important that it's part of a comprehensive game plan, and obviously a community like this that it's already working on your cultural planning, which we see more and more across the Commonwealth. The communities are really thinking about arts and culture as a factor and belongs in whether it's town hall or city planning and the way they want to shape their community. And sometimes we think of everybody but sort of the core of an arts initiative, which is the artist, the actual artist. So we want to make sure that as communities are thinking about their cultural plan and engaging in cultural planning, that artists are at the table and have some co-authorship and are part of the architecture of that plan. And a lot of communities have sort of who the artists that you know are, but you don't know who you don't know. And for example, Greenfield is one of the communities that we've worked with, one of our relatively new cultural districts. They have 600 artists within half an hour of downtown Greenfield. And do you know Greenfield? I would call it more rural. In parts of Massachusetts. And a lot of artists are attracted to that because of the low cost of housing and a lot of available workspace and so forth. So the ability to connect with 600 artists, if you're Greenfield, is really a powerful source of energy for any sort of cultural planning, plus the activities that they're having in their community. So we're going to be putting together a tool for communities, and probably working with a consultant, at least as we get started and learn more about how to connect with artists and artist industry. It's not as simple as putting an ad on the webpage, please sign up all y'all artists. I mean, it really is a very intentional knowing where artists hang out. I'd go over to your place, probably might know an artist or two there, and really thinking through where artists are in your community and inviting and engaging artists to be part of the project and part of the activities that you're doing. So this is the first time we've done this at the Mass Cultural Council, and as I said, we'll be test driving it this year and hopefully learn from our mistakes if we make any, and then make it more broadly available in the coming years.
I can also speak to that. So I didn't mention our areas of service. So MAPC is available to help communities with cultural asset mapping, which is essentially the inventory. We can also do cultural planning, and we also have expertise in creative placemaking. So for the Albion project, and also most recently in Arlington, Massachusetts, we did the cultural asset mapping process, which can involve focus groups, surveys, but it's really to document a range of arts and cultural assets, everything from physical infrastructure to temporary public art to permanent public art.
We actually have another thing that is sort of tangent to this, and you need to understand that everybody's an artist, not just people who say they're an artist, and they just don't know it, or they don't have enough confidence yet. And to that note, we're doing a thing coming up that's, I mean, dare I say it's innovative. It's with the Friends of Lake Quannapowitt. So if you're from the area and you say to somebody Wakefield, the first thing they say is what? Lake Quannapowitt. We recently did a photo contest on the 4th of July, And I talked to Steve and I said, hey, we need to engage people. We're going to have a big swell of people coming here. What are they doing? We're kind of sick of parade photos. No disrespect to the parade, but everybody has them and there's miles of them. What are they all doing when we have our fireworks? They all have their cell phones out. And there's photogs and there's people there doing just photos, 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 photos. So we held a contest. And the feedback we got from that contest was that everybody loved it. They want us to do it again. They want us to do more contests. And we're totally ready to do that as long as the contests have a certain level of quality. That one had quality. We're not going to just do one again to be there. But to the note that everybody is an artist. The Friends of Lake Quannapowitt, we have established sort of a partnership and just sort of agreed to the idea that we want to work with them because they're like the #1 icon in Wakefield, and we're trying to do the cultural exchange thing. Our program is going to be a Lake Quannapowitt photo show. And the way that it's going to come out, I'm still sort of writing the media to make this happen and building the web stuff, to the technology to make it work, is that anybody within certain criteria, which my committee will have to discuss, can submit a photo digitally and be part of the art show. It'll probably be like 1 photo per person, but this will be something that's out there in social media, out there in La La Land, where we can pull people off the couch, like Steve said, and make them come downtown, because there's people that are going to be in that show might not identify themselves as artists, but they take pictures all day long. And so we're going to basically have an interactive thing where anybody can be part of the art show. I have people come up to me constantly when they find out that I'm in charge of the cultural exchange, and a lot of times they're artists. And they just sort of slither up to me, and at the end of the day, really what they want is they want a show. They want me to staff it. They want me to put beverages there. They want me to run everything, and they want to sell their art and put it up there. And hey, that's great. But they need to participate within our organization a little bit more before you get a show. You don't just bubble to the top of the list for a show. This event is going to let everybody participate on an equal level. And aside from photos being extremely out of focus, it won't matter if you're the best artist or the worst artist. You can participate. And as far as getting people to the event, with all these people participating, it's kind of like the high school events. If you got your photo into the show, you're probably going to show up. So we'll probably have pretty good attendance. Depending on how this goes, and no guarantees here, we may end up trying to do a pet photo show. Not with pets there, but pets are another fanatical topic where if you've got somebody who likes to take pictures of their pet, they have 4,000 of them, and I will ask them to please provide one. And we'll do the same sort of thing. But we're going to start with the lake. And I expect it to be successful, to be honest with you. The feedback we've gotten so far, Hunt's Photo and Melrose is going to, like I said, give us the prints for free. We're going to put them up there. We're engaging, the town of Wakefield is actually engaging with the Friends of Lake Quannapowitt. We have a Lake Quannapowitt page on our website. And we're starting to feed the photos in there because the Friends of Lake Quannapowitt, for people that are into social media, they sort of manage an Instagram page of lake photos, and people tag the lake 200-300 times a day that in the summer. And the Friends of Lake Quannapowitt goes through and they put it up to their Instagram feed, and we're sort of arranging for that to come into the town lake page. We need to meter it so that we see which photos go up to make sure they're appropriate lake photos. But this is getting people interactive, and the big thing here is these people don't necessarily call themselves artists. If you gave them the box to check, they'd probably be scared to do it, but they are.
That reminds me, similar idea. I love your idea, though, that we're all makers and we're all artists. Out in North Adams, about 5 years ago, they started a program that's called Figment, like figment of your imagination. And they basically just said to the communities, we've got the park, you set up your own table to make what you want to make and invite other people to make it with you. And the first year they had 10 tables. Last year they had 500. In North Adams. It's not highly populated out there. But everybody wants to be a maker. So that's a really good point.
Excellent. Yeah, other questions? Yeah, if you could just kind of come over to the microphones. Does that one, I think it's working. Yep.
Oh, it does.
And we are starting to get close to 8, so I would ask, just sort of ask your questions as succinctly as you can, and on our answers, let's just try to be pretty punchy because we are going to have to wrap up fairly soon. Go ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Chris from Wakefield, and I wondered if people had ideas about incorporating some of the lost arts, because I think about some of the people that really need to get out of the house and do get housebound and isolated are the elders and seniors. And I know in my neighborhood there's 4 generations of people that are so knowledgeable about anything with the yard and crafts and quilting and canning and all of these other things. And it would be wonderful to, kind of have young people tap, maybe interview them or do some narratives on some of the lost arts that are out there, and, the wealth of knowledge that's out there. Yeah.
We don't per se have staff to find these people, but what we do have is the opportunity to sort of request engagement with the committee, which if you go to the Albion Cultural Exchange committee page, and on our website, we have a form that if you wanted an event or a class or something like that, you had an idea, you can fill out that idea. That idea gets mailed to the committee, and we look at them once a month, and our secretary, Kathy Fry, is very good about keeping track of all of our ideas. So we have our meeting minutes and then like 5 other pages of ideas that were pushed in, and we take the ideas that bubble to the top that have the most motivation. We can't do everybody's idea when they come in, but we are definitely tracking them.
My name is Osa Schwab, and I'm a small creative business in Malden. And I've had some frustration around sort of being strategic about arts initiatives in the city of Malden, and probably in part because I'm not a nonprofit, and I've had some ideas about citywide kind of planning initiatives that I find, maybe it's a matter of, putting the right proposal in front of the right person. Part of it is funding. But I find it very challenging to sort of navigate the system as an individual business. And of course, you can piggyback on another nonprofit, but I also find that a lot of nonprofits are focused on a very narrow area of interest. And whereas I think in our city, what we really need is some strategic planning around culture and arts, and to accelerate the progress rather than work on one project at a time. And so one of the ideas I had was, in fact, to do an inventory, and I was using Creative Ground to use that. For those of you, that's a directory that was produced by New England Foundation for the Arts, and it's a free inventory for arts and cultural organizations in New England. But I guess I'm asking if you could speak to sort of strategic ways to navigate the system as an individual business to really get some leverage and get the right stakeholders together to make things happen in a more strategic planning way.
I would love to tell you that. First of all, I would say I'm a huge advocate of artists in government, which means finding ways to serve on your local boards, committees, and commissions. I would suggest that, I think what's wonderful about having an arts and cultural practice at the regional level is we're modeling what planning and community development departments can think about creating, which is really creating this capacity to engage the arts and cultural community to advance both community development and economic development priorities. So I'd say as much as you can talk about the importance of arts and culture in terms of how it can impact, community development, civic life, economic development, the more you can practice those talking points and that messaging, the more you'll develop advocates within government. So I would say, reach out to your planning community development department. Ask them, did they know that you have a local cultural council that you can partner with and access some of those funding resources to leverage? So I think there are many creative ways in which this work can be funded and where it can originate. It could originate from the LCCs, can originate from the planning department, it can originate from the mayor's office, from the town administrator's office. So I'd say there's no one size fits all, but I would say, for artists, it does mean you need to do a little bit of, outreach and advocacy and organizing. And I say this as someone working in government to do that.
And feel free. Hello. Feel free to email me if you want. I'm friends with one of the communications managers over in Malden. I know him from regional conferences, and I can ask him more specific people to talk to. So if you want to email me, I'm happy to follow up.
Hi, my name is Ben Jacques, and I've been managing a 12-concert series of chamber music in Stoneham, trying to bring the classical music to the Stoneham for the first time with limited success. And I think we all have a lot to learn how we can work together in the Stoneham community, for example, but I love what I'm hearing from you, and inspired. I love the idea of the cultural exchange as well. The one thing I wanted to ask about and to mention is I'm also a member of the Stoneham Coalition, and our main work is there to educate and prevent addiction, both alcohol and drug and tobacco addiction. And we just, thank God, received a $625,000 Drug-Free Communities grant. We just got word this last week, and $125,000 a year. And the focus of this is for youth. Now, what I would like to do, and we've been talking about this, is how can we, tell our story and reach our young people through the arts, because I think that's such a rich way of communicating and engaging with our young people. And I'm wondering if any of you have any experience with arts programs that, say, work with the recovery programs or with similar types of programs. Thanks.
In Wakefield, I'm familiar with, but I don't have direct contact with. There's I think it's called Roman Arts Therapy. They do drum circles with disadvantaged, and I'm not sure their exact category, but with disadvantaged and potentially substance abuse communities. And so that's like Roman Art Therapy. It's on North Ave in Wakefield.
And you could also contact our staff in our Creative Youth Development Program. We have about 60 programs that are working with incarcerated youth, youth that have just gotten released from incarceration, and it's all about helping young people avoid the pitfalls that are in front of them as they're transitioning to adulthood.
And if I might add, Wakefield, we have been lucky to have that grant now, second time running. It's a fabulous program, what they do with particularly the young people. We do have a youth action team that we work with very closely with that. So if you want to contact our Board of Health in Wakefield that runs through there, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. And contact us. We'd maybe get some chamber music in Wakefield, too. So.
Thanks, Ben. Let's do Candace over here, right? And then one last question over there. Okay.
I know we're close to the end, so I'll be very quick. My name's Candace Julian. I'm the co-chair of the Malden Cultural Council, and we had a visioning meeting. There are actually a number of us here that were part of that, and Senator Lewis was part of it too. One of our thoughts in Malden right now is that we're really at a tipping point. We feel like there's been enough happening in Malden around the arts that we feel that something exciting is about to happen. So it was very encouraging for me to hear about what's going on in Wakefield. So my quick question about that, and maybe I'll follow up with you all later, is I'm curious about the amount of time that it took for you to go from people sort of thinking like, maybe we should do this, to it actually happening. I'm just curious about the length of time.
We've always had a very active art collaborative in Wakefield, so that really helped, and it sounds like there's always been that in Malden too. I think that the building came available in 2015, and really for years we've been percolating on this idea. We had the marketing report in 2014. Building came available, and we really jumped on it, and within 6 months we had our first event there.
So you first started thinking about it long before that.
Yeah, before then, yeah.
Okay, well that's encouraging.
On our building, the way that we sort of did it was the building became available, and we did a video survey on Facebook and on our website. It was about a 3-minute video touring the building, and we asked the public what they wanted to do with the building and had a survey form, and it came back somewhere in the 90 percentile range of an arts and culture facility versus selling the building or something to that effect. We did have some very aggressive people that wanted other things, but 90% or so were arts and culture.
And that really helped with the decision to keep it, too, so that really helped. Okay.
Hi, my name's Jocelyn, and I live in Melrose, and I just wanted to thank you. It's great to see community leaders out supporting the arts, so thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to offer this for the public. And thank you for Stoneham, for the theater. I have attended productions here. It's a lovely theater, and they have a wonderful range of productions. I also know an architect who worked on the building, and architecture is part of that arts landscape. I was surprised to find out recently that an architect I had been somewhat aware of had also served as a veteran, And I think in terms of communities that benefit from the arts and also have something to contribute to the arts, the veterans community is a great community to look toward, both for support of the arts and also for contributions from artists in support of families who serve. I think those are helpful kinds of things. I was wondering whether or not there's going to be any type of formal arts funding for the upcoming 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims landing in Plymouth. I know there is some sort of statewide council on that, and I was hoping that there would be an integration of the tourism outreach from Plymouth with the Freedom Trail in Boston and maybe some of the Metro Boston communities. I know Melrose has some historic properties, and I'm sure other communities do too. And also, America celebrates its 250th birthday of its democracy in 2026, which is 9 years away and sounds like a long time, but actually there's already national planning. Canada is celebrating its 150th this year. The Canadian government spent in excess of $500 million on its birthday in terms of projects at all levels that have been ongoing all year. How much of that was arts funding? I don't know, and I don't know what the Canadian private sector spent on that or other things, but I would hope that for Massachusetts, that there's some national funding in advance of that 400th anniversary in Plymouth that reaches the Metro Boston area. I would also hope that there's some arts funding for the 250th, and that funding is, available in advance, and that there's maybe, a look at what can some of the 65 institutions of higher education in Massachusetts do in support of the arts in recognition of those anniversaries, or other institutions, could they possibly be encouraged? But I know there's a tremendous amount of spending in other parts of the budget, and so it's not totally unrealistic to ask for some funding. And in terms of people who are traumatized or people who have other concerns, I know Melrose Wakefield Hospital, for example, has a wonderful program where it includes artworks within its actual hospital facility. I love that program, and it's helped me personally to see many of the artworks that have been displayed there. That's been a wonderful resource, and for me that's probably meant more than the vast number of people we have serving in professional health care. Not that that hasn't been important to me from a public health standpoint. I've certainly benefited from some leadership by Massachusetts there. But in terms of a personal benefit, I've loved what the artists have done, and that Melrose Wakefield Hospital has gone to the trouble of showcasing artworks right in their facility where even people from the community can access them. Some of the most expensive artworks in local areas are within religious establishments. I mean, if you wanted to go back and recreate some of the stained glass windows in churches, for example, you wouldn't be able to do that today. It'd just be prohibitively expensive. So I hope when we look at, the 400th anniversary of the religious pilgrims coming to America, we think about concepts of limiting persecution like the Founding Fathers wanted, and also maybe honoring the contributions of people from all faith traditions. I read something recently from Harvard Divinity School that said religion can be a jumping off point for conflict or for cooperation and collaboration. And I think that's true of art as well. So I hope, there's something that Massachusetts can get in terms of funding from the national level for those important anniversaries that are coming up.
So we do have a Mass 400 commission that was appointed by the governor last year. We haven't been successful in landing a whole lot of money behind it, but there's a terrific website that Plymouth 400 has, and a lot of the themes that you've talked about are reflected in the themes of their celebration. Speaking of the rest of the world, Plymouth, England, remember that's where they left on the Mayflower, has $20 million invested in the commemoration of that event because they expect so many Americans to be thinking about the 400th anniversary, and they're all going to go see where the boat came from. We haven't exactly seen that happen. There's also an organization, a collective of history organizations called Rev 250, Revolution 250, that is already hard at work thinking about all those 250 anniversaries, which are already starting from the Stamp Act to women's suffrage, So a lot of that organization is already going on. So just stay tuned and Google it, and you'll be hearing more about the activities, and do ask your legislators for more funding.
Thank you. That's terrific.
It's a great suggestion, and I definitely think we need to look at that. Thank you all so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I know we could continue on probably for hours, but the hours, it's starting to get late, so we need to wrap up. On any of these issues, feel free to follow up with any one of our speakers directly. If you aren't able to connect with them tonight, feel free to follow up with my office, and we will connect you with any of our speakers or other resources. My office is already, working with many of you on some of these projects, but feel free to follow up. Thank you so much to the Greater Boston Stage Company again for hosting us. Come back and see a show. For those of you who haven't or haven't in a while. Thank you so much to all of our cultural councils for the terrific work that you do, and all the other arts and culture organizations that are here with us tonight, and all the amazing work you do to enrich our communities. Thank you so much to Anita Walker, Chris Carino, Steve Mayo, Jennifer Erickson. You guys are great. Thank you. And good night, everyone.